get started. The countdown has started. Hi, welcome to this session, Growing Pains, What It Takes to be a Transformational Leader. And I'm here to moderate Nandita Bakshi. My name is Lisa Ordonez. I'm the Dean of the Rady School of Management at UC San Diego. And we are honored to have this transformational modern leader who, until very recently, was the president and CEO of Bank of the West. Just on February 1st was announced that BMO has acquired Bank of the West, and so now Nandita is a special advisor and on the board of BMO. She has 25 years of experience in banking. She was 7 years, almost 7 years, at Bank of the West, and before that had led TD Bank in several high-level leadership roles. And I'm so pleased to moderate this session. We obviously don't have time for questions, but we'll go ahead and get started. So, Nandita, you have a unique and successful career. Tell us a bit about your background.
Well, I'm looking around the room here. A lot of us are immigrants to this country, and mine is perhaps a similar, very immigrant story. Came to this country 3 decades ago with a master's degree in international relations, and I followed my husband who came here to do his PhD. I thought I'd be a supportive wife. I don't think I've been that ever. But wanted to work, so walked into a bank branch and became a part-time teller. And that was literally 36 years ago. And as you mentioned, Lisa, I just finished my journey as an operator, as a CEO of Bank of the West, which was about a $100 billion bank. So it's been an amazing journey from a part-time teller to managing a $100 billion asset bank for a foreign company. We're owned by BNP Paribas. Now we're owned by BMO, Bank of Montreal. And I call myself the accidental banker. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trained to be a banker. I don't even have a degree in finance. But once I joined banking, and I've been at different institutions all over the country, including Bank of America, Fleet, JP Morgan, Chase, WAMU, First Data, you name it. I guess I couldn't hold on to a job. But what I liked about banking is that it is all about financing the opportunity. It is all about propelling the society. And I think it really became evident during the COVID months, the couple of years that we had for COVID, how banks helped out tremendously the society, the small businesses through Paycheck Protection Program, and so on and so forth. I've been called a rare species because there are not too many female CEO, Jane Fraser from Citibank, myself, and a few others, but so be it.
Oh, wonderful. So let's jump into the topic, which what does it take to be a successful transformational leader?
When I was growing up back in the 80s, mid-80s, a leader meant a boss. And I'm generalizing here, but most of the bosses I've had were white, older. They had the corner office, and their style was extremely directive and prescriptive. They talked about having an open door policy, but you had to come on a certain day to find that door open. But I think today leadership is extremely different. Today, especially after COVID, you have to connect and stay engaged with your employees. So one of the things I did when I took the job of Bank of the West CEO was spend the first 6 months on what I call the listening tour. Bank of the West had 10,000 employees. We had from call center agents, part-time tellers, to risk managers, to auditors, all around the spectrum, right? So I spent 6 months meeting in person, lunches, dinners, small group meetings, over 50% of my colleagues. And that allowed me to have a credibility and a trust, associated with the CEO office. So I would say leadership today is extremely different. Leadership today is also purpose-driven. If you have a purpose, stand up for it. And I think today employees are looking to work for organizations that lead that way.
Wonderful. So tell me about some more experiences that have helped you develop your leadership style, and what is that style?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I don't have a traditional background. I don't have a traditional career path in this country. I don't have a lot of reverence for title or corner offices. Didn't grow up with one for a very long time. I am what I would call results-oriented leader that wants to get to the results, whether it's for the customer or for our employee base. And what I have found worked for me, whether it was the listening to or understanding people, where they're coming from, what has worked for me is to be a purpose-driven leader. And there I want to talk about where you give as much priority to your bottom line as you do to your values. Where you create an organization, create a culture where everybody feels safe and is able to come and perform and feels empowered. I have historically, anytime I would hire a HR leader, I would say, I consider myself the chief talent officer. So we're going to be doing it together. In fact, I have a very interesting employment philosophy where I would say, I'm looking for those individuals that will one day head up an organization, whether it's a marketing team or HR or a business for a Fortune 100 company. As a smaller bank, I didn't have the deep pockets to pay them that kind of cash. So I would always say, come and spend 5 to 7 years of your time with us. I will create an environment where you can be extremely successful and move along, right? So, and I think that's what people are looking for today. If you can create an organization where people can relate to, you can retain them. And I'm so proud of the journey that my team and I have been together at Bank of the West, where a $100 billion bank, we were not publicly traded in this country, yet we had a distinct brand. We had a distinctiveness about ourselves, where we attracted customers to come and bank with us over some of the very large banks that were in our neighborhood. Or we had employees. Hiring in Silicon Valley is extremely difficult when you have, large organizations like Facebook and Google and others. So it is those types of leadership traits that I think differentiates the bank or differentiates the organization and then creates that environment where people want to come and thrive.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what do you think, what do you look for in a leader? And the classic question, are leaders born or are they made? So what is a leader?
So what I look for is, after some time at a senior level position, people have the wherewithal. They have the smarts. Everybody has the smarts. They have the domain knowledge. So what I look for is, in addition to having the smarts, having the competency, knowing what good looks like, do you have the EQ to make you a leader? And if you look at the management team that I had till very recently, I had a third that I had hired from within the organization that have been with Bank of the West for years and years. I hired a third from my parent company, BNP Paribas, because they're a very large organization and they could hire, from the best schools there. And a third came from the outside, large organizations that knew what good looks like. But what was interesting is, while we each came from different background and had very different competencies or, domain expertise, what was very similar were the values. We all cared about the environment. We all cared about diversity. We all cared about creating an environment that was dynamic, that was non-hierarchical, that was kind of working like a startup within a large conglomerate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I look for in leadership is, can you show your vulnerability? Can you bring people together, inspire them, motivate them? And it's not always about the bottom line, because the bottom line will come. If you're delivering for the customers, and if you have happy employees, I never have to worry about our bottom line. In fact, some of the matrices we were able to produce, from 7 years ago to just last couple of years were absolutely phenomenal. And these were financial matrices. But we had a very long period where we had announced the merger with BMO, but we were waiting for regulatory approval. A 13-month period where there was uncertainty within 9,700 people whether they would have jobs. Yet every time, every month we went out and asked them the question, the employee engagement ratio came at higher than 86%. Excitement about the merger came in at mid-80s again, right? So it is how do you connect, how do you communicate, and it wasn't just me. It was my leadership team and their teams, because, yes, you talk about tone from the top, but one person cannot do it all.
Right. So tell me about some of the joys and maybe even challenges of being a leader.
Yeah, I think the challenges are that you have to be extremely purposeful and thoughtful as you're picking up your colleagues at every level, right? I would spend hours to interview people, and I would rarely ask my CFO, hey, do you know CECL? Do you know how you do that accounting principle? Do you know GAAP versus IFRS? That was not my primary concern. My primary concern was, can he lead? Can he bring a group of people together to take us from point A to point B? And then making sure that the whole team feels that way. The whole organization feels that way. I think it is incredibly hard because it is really eyeball to eyeball. It doesn't happen because you wrote a memo. It doesn't happen because you wanted it and you willed it, right? It is person to person that you have to constantly talk to, be inspired, or have reverse mentoring and then be inspired by them, right? But I think the joy of seeing it coming together once you're past the inflection point is absolutely tremendous. I mean, I'll give you an example. When the Treasury Secretary announced on a particular Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to pretty much the world in US that if you're a small business owner, please go to your bank tomorrow morning, they have money for you. We had no idea what the gentleman was talking about, right? I picked up the phone and I talked to my head of small business and say, do we know what form to use? Do we know what to do? Is there something that we've been given? Of course not, right? So picked up the phone again and called my head of digital and I said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You have 12 hours to create something that will work for our customers, and we're giving you very little information. So the business team, the IT team, and the digital interface, the web team went together and they worked the night and came back with an application. We tried it on a couple of our customers, some smaller customers, medium-sized customers, large customers, because everybody was eligible for this money. And they gave us feedback. And we went back and modified that. That evening, we were one of the very first banks to launch a fully automated application for PPP loans. And we had some big name competitors calling us and said, how the heck did you do it? Right? It was, again, allowing them to say that it's okay. If you create it, it may not work. And we were doing this on the side while we were calling the big third parties to say, hey, can you help us with this? And they said, sure, take a number. You're the 27th largest bank. No, the 27th one that will come and help. Mm-hmm. That would have taken weeks and weeks. So to see that come together, and even as we were giving out the money, if some of you maybe have been following it, there was a crisis to say, uh-oh, there's only about $1 billion left and you've got so many applications still remaining. And so we were like, what are we going to do? How are we going to help our customers? I had 70 senior loan officers that morning that said, we're going to take the day off. We're going to all come back that evening, about 9 o'clock, West Coast time. And they started to work, and they worked through the night because we were figuring out that while everybody was working, there was a backlog of pushing those applications through. Nobody was working during midnight to put the application through. So the 70 loan officers, each working from their home, their kitchen, counter, their living room, their bedroom, because it was COVID time, right? And they had a conference line going that they were using to talk to each other or play music or have fun with them. So by morning, we had processed, I think, 15 million transactions worth of dollars that morning. So again, to see all of that coming together, none of these were my asks. I didn't ask these 70 individuals to go home and do it, but we said, every time you're giving a small business customer a loan, you're saving at least 10 jobs. So we were measuring it that way, and we were constantly saying, we gave out $4 billion, we saved 350,000 jobs in the country.
Wonderful. Did you ever get to speak to some of these small business owners?
Yes,
And tell me a story. I'm sure you have many.
There were stories, there were human stories coming from everywhere that said, I am a small caterer, every single employee would have lost their jobs and wouldn't have received any monies, and because of Bank of the West and because of this money that we got from Treasury, we were able to keep that. Because on the other side, what I also am very proud to do is I am on the board of Grameen America, where Grameen Bank, as you know, was Muhammad Yunus's program from way back when, for which he got the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm on their board of the American chapter of Grameen Bank, and we give out loans, few $100s, a couple of $1,000s to women to help them start their business. So while Grameen was doing that, our organization was doing that, and that was just absolutely wonderful, and this is why I say banking is a noble profession.
That's wonderful. So what would you summarize for this audience here of investors and entrepreneurs? What message would you give to them as they go back out after this wonderful summit?
Yeah, so I call myself a stodgy banker. I have never stepped outside of the bank premises. This is my very first engagement. I of course, have talked to startups, but I've talked to startups as they have come to me pitching for a program that they have. So I've leveraged them more as a vendor than anything else. So I've been spending the whole day just listening to everybody speak, from the morning to now. And again, I would say at the end of the day, the problems are the same. It doesn't matter if you're a 200-year company or a 2-week company. I think at the end of the day, we're trying to do two things. One, serve our customers and have the best talent that we can. So many of the individuals today have told me, because one of the questions I've asked them is, what is the criteria you use? How are you discerning that this is a real good idea and this is not? I cannot talk about the fact that, yes, this is a problem in the economy and maybe this will help them, but every single one of them have said to me, we look at the founder, we look at the leader. And it's not just the founder, we also look at the management team that surrounds them. Right. So everything I said today is, again, very similar. I may be a $100 billion bank, I may be part of BNP Paribas, a French organization, I may be serving a very different base of customers than some of the entrepreneurs and the startup organizations are doing. But I think at the end of the day, we're trying to serve our customer and we're trying to value our talent as we do that. So I think it's a very similar message.
Wonderful. And can you speak a bit about your new role and kind of what do you hope to do? What are you going to bring with you from Bank of the West, and what do you hope to accomplish in this role?
Yeah, so this is a big deal for BMO. This is the largest bank acquisition that any bank in Canada has done in the US. So it's a very, very big deal for them. And this also, so BMO, a little bit about BMO, they're about $1 trillion bank, including Bank of the West. They're headquartered in Toronto, not in Montreal. They've outgrown Montreal. And their US offices are in Chicago. So this is the very first time with the acquisition of Bank of the West, which we are in 18 different states, California being our major state, and of course Colorado, Oregon, and a few other states in the Midwest. So they get to branch out and be part of the western part of this country. So this is a strategic acquisition for them. And I remember when going to Chicago to make our first presentation after we did our evaluation, and what got me to listen to the CEO at that time, he said to me, if I take your vision, your Bank of the West vision, and if I take BMO vision, and if I change out the names, you couldn't tell. That's what I like about that organization. It's a purpose-driven organization that wants to do good in business and in life. And my role, so I walked away from being the CEO. I want to do other things. I want to have fun. Not that being a CEO was not fun, but I decided to stay on as an advisor primarily because I want to make sure that the transition goes smoothly. Yeah. It's an amazing asset that they just bought. And they didn't buy branches, they bought talent. So it is my goal and my one-point agenda to make sure that the people move over as much as BMO wants. And there are times when I'm having conversations, because I report to the CEO in Toronto directly, and I'm telling them, you're out of your mind if you think you can do without this pricing guy, especially as you're looking at deposits, the liquidity being a huge issue going forward, right? So I'm able to come and punctuate these issues for them. And and I'm also on their board, so that I get to see the other side now. And so no, it's going to be an interesting transition. I never not have been an operator. So it is going to be a little bit of a self-reflective moment for me to see how do I do. That's why I'm here on a Tuesday talking to you all, and I'm not dealing with a cybersecurity meeting or program somewhere. But it's going to be an interesting time for me to see how I do, and will help me make decisions on my future going forward. But I'm very, very excited with what future holds for me.
Wonderful. Well, I always insist on a fun question. So you said, now it's time for me to have fun. What does fun look like for Nandita?
Well, it definitely involves traveling, okay, right? But I don't think I could travel 12 months a year. But I want to get engaged. You know, what I like doing is roll up my sleeves and do good, whether it's in business or for the society. What I'm looking to do is, how do I pay forward? Okay. How do I have an impact without a CEO title?
Okay. Well, then I'm going to give you an invitation to come speak at UC San Diego Rady School.
Happy to do that.
I think it would be wonderful, and our students would really welcome that. So thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you, Lisa.
And let me say, I just thank you for this time and for your insights, and will the audience celebrate with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.